Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Tom Worth Jr. Today we're going to talk about what we talk about every day, which is Donald Trump's unfitness for office. And today, from a national security perspective, we have discussed, in practical terms, how he would be damaging, but there's just been such an outpouring of people who know way more about this stuff than I do. Actual national security professionals and actual people who served in his administration. I started out today, I was going to refresh my memory with some of the violence that accompanied his term. And I started out by thinking about all of the violence that has transpired during Biden's term. The Biden-Harris 3 years and whatever, 8 or 9 months. And just sitting there wondering, okay, let me just run through all of the protests that have resulted in bloodshed and death and property destruction, and it dominated the news headlines. And well, here's the list. Yeah, that's it. I can't come up with any. This is not to say that nobody protests anything over the last 4 years. This is to say that Donald Trump's 4 years in office were defined by violent protest, by white supremacy, by racist violence, by Confederate flag wavers. And of course you have January 6th, which is really the root of a lot of concerns for the national security professionals and people in his administration. It's not all of it by any means, but that was kind of the culmination of what many of them suspected and feared and had already bailed out on his administration, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, during his 4 years. You have someone like his first Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, who made it a little over a year. He was a former CEO of Exxon. Say what you will about a CEO of Exxon, but I would say that is a person who knows a lot about foreign policy and foreign interests for the United States, but more importantly, his own company. He needs stability. He needs that's just what, and that is what the United States as a country also needs. And his quotes about Donald Trump were, I'm not going to look them up right now. Maybe I will later on. But just about how unstable he is, and his basic, his lack of understanding about history and foreign policy. That he has a lack of basic understanding of history and American interests. And everybody tells you that. That is not a secret. That's Trump. And you don't fire your Secretary of State a year into his job while he is en route in a plane from an African trip and fire him over tweet. That is unstable. That is also the subject of a New York Times survey that they conducted for undecided voters. And that was actually this morning. I saw that, get a little daily email from a number of sources, including the New York Times. But this is undecided voters for both sides. So people are hammering Kamala Harris on things too. Like, the number one issue for undecided voters for what's your biggest problem with Kamala Harris, what's your biggest problem with Donald Trump, is temperament. That's the number one issue for undecided voters for either candidate. But Kamala Harris was 17%. That was the most cited reason for people why they might not vote for her. With Donald Trump, that was 35%. Well, Like you could have every issue, and over a third of the people listed that as their main issue. Like, I'm not sure who I'm gonna vote for, but my biggest problem with this guy is he's not capable of acting like a president and doing presidential things. He can't control himself. That is what national security professionals have said about him. They have signed on to a statement. This was news several days ago about over 700 security officials, not just not voting for Trump, who you have people like Bill Barr, who Trump brought in later in his presidency to try to quash the DOJ investigation into him, and Bill Barr did exactly what he was brought on to do. He got the report himself. He kept it out of the press's hands for a while, redacted a whole bunch of it. In the meantime, as days went by, Bill Barr himself completely mischaracterized the DOJ's investigation results of Donald Trump, and just lied to the American people about what it actually contained. Bill Barr is a he's a liar, and he goes way back. Republicans love this guy. He's just a liar, and he lied for Donald Trump. Bill Barr is a guy who is, he's still not, okay, his exact quote was, "He will always put his own interests and gratifying his own ego ahead of everything else, including the country's interest. There's no question about it." Ahead of everything else, including the country's interest. There's no question about it. This Bill Barr, who's Attorney General from 2019 to 2020, held the same position under George H.W. Bush, who was a great guy. Bill Barr is still voting for Donald Trump, despite saying that. How do you even compete with this? When I'm talking about educated voters and people who are signing statements, hundreds and hundreds of people who are signing, thousands of people. But Bill Barr goes on the record and says that, and still says, "I'm voting for Donald Trump." What? He has zero credibility. Just. But that's Bill Barr. These hundreds of national security professionals are actually endorsing Kamala Harris. They are taking that leap. They're not only not voting for Donald Trump, they are endorsing Kamala Harris. So kudos to them because they're going out on a limb. They're putting their names to things. And if you think Donald Trump, when he ever has a future opportunity to wield power again, and God forbid, he has their names now. So that's bold. This is how deeply in these entrenched Republicans are, who have been there for decades. It's like they're gonna have their Republican card revoked or something. I don't understand. When you have a guy trying to undermine the very United States of America, but you are going on the record saying, "Yeah, but I'm still voting for him." And he's not giving any reasons about why he's voting against Kamala Harris. He's just saying, "I have to vote for the Republican. That's all I'm programmed to do." Well, you have 700 security officials who are not programmed to only vote for the Republican. And if you know anything about national security, you will know that is a dirty, nasty business. And these people have to deal with things that most people never have to see or hear about or know about. Like the things they have to do, the things they have to stomach, the decisions they have to live with. In the United States itself, we were friends with Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi in Libya, and this is just We have to do this. It's in our national interest sometimes to have stability in these places. And that can only be brought about sometimes in the eyes of people who are in charge of our foreign policy. That can only be brought about by brutal dictatorship and suppression of citizens of these countries. So this is what these national security professionals have to deal with. They have to live in a world where they know way more about the atrocities being committed by these dictators against their own people. They know way more than we ever will. And still, we prop them up because it is in our best security interest to do so. That's just how government has to think. So you see 4 years ago that the historians all came out uniformly against Trump. They have no such like they're not down with brutal dictatorships and human rights violations. The historians, they're more like we have to be human beings, and we have to respect humanity, and we have to have ideals, and Donald Trump can't be president for those reasons. They're not thinking in terms of national security. So they're quickly on board by going against Trump 4 years ago as a group. These national security professionals, only several days ago, 4 days ago I think is when it first came out, these people see the worst of the worst, and they administer the worst of the worst, and they kind of ensure that it keeps happening if it is in the best interest of the United States. Even these people say Donald Trump cannot be the president again because he is undermining the interests of the United States. He's undermining democracy itself in the United States. And all you either undecided people or Trump voters who think you know more than these people, you don't. You only know what you're hearing in your media sources. You're not doing the research. You're not doing the work. Have I gone in and researched and done work and everything on this? I'm going off of what the people who have dedicated their entire lives to this craft. That's not me. I've dedicated more than average, but it's not been my entire life. Like it has these people in charge of the military, people in charge of foreign affairs, people in charge of foreign policy. That's what these people do, and they are all against Trump. And that may not bother you to have someone like Trump in charge, because you may think you are in favor of his withdrawal from all of our alliances. You may think that it is in our best interest to be friends with Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un, brutal dictators. You may think that it is in our best interest to be friends with them, while you disparage leaders of France and Germany and Australia and the UK and Canada. I'm not trying to reach you. You're too far gone. So go and make your fun little comments here about how I too am a racist and then it's just laughable. Okay, I'm not going to read you some of those. But what I would read is something about a timeline back to what I was originally thinking I was going to talk today with the violent protests. It is a summary in BuzzFeed, and it was done back on, it was called "The Capitol Insurrection was the end result of a Trump presidency defined by violence." And this was written January 13, 2021. And BuzzFeed News. And they go through point by point, starting before he actually took office, with the violence based on what people were radicalized to do, like with the pizza place where some crazy guy brought an assault rifle and was going to to kill people because he was convinced that there was some sex trafficking ring at this pizza place, because that's what he read in his far right-wing media sites. He was prepared to kill people. He was thwarted. There are people who threatened Muslims or hijab wearing people, or there were actually 23 people shot and killed in an El Paso Walmart, with the guy raving about them being here illegally, and he was going to get rid of them. That was during Trump's presidency. This is what he incites people to do. And of course it did the Unite the Right thing in Charlottesville as well. This is the violence that Trump always attempts to incite, and he did it even before he took office. And it just was unceasing. Versus what has happened under the Biden-Harris administration, you're not having that. If there is a shooting, the president comes out and condemns it, as any president ever has. Trump doesn't do that. He says there are good people on both sides. He supports them. He does little hand signals, and he uses specific words to shout out to them that, yeah, that's cool. That's just Trump. And you may be okay with the domestic violence that he incites. Most people are not. But the national security thing is a big deal, because these people are Republicans and Democrats, and they are going on the record, even though they might have their Republican cards pulled. I guess I still don't get someone like Bill Barr. And he's not the only one who not only won't vote for Kamala Harris, but says he will vote for Trump still. And I hate to give those guys that kind of attention, because that might make it seem like it's okay to some of you Trump voters out there. But it's not okay. And really who I'm trying to talk to are the undecided voters. My first read on undecided voters had been, well, if you're undecided, you're really a Trump voter, and he has just gotten so bad for you that you're questioning whether you can actually vote for him again, and that's the only reason you're undecided. But I do know there are some undecided on the Kamala Harris side, because they feel like they don't know her. But the number one issue, as it was with Trump, was temperament. But the only reason that is the number one issue for her, and it's only 17% on her and 35% on Trump, is because it's tied in with people not knowing her. They haven't seen her be president before. And with Donald Trump, you saw 4 years of him being the president, and you may have been a Trump voter in 2016, but after 4 years of his actual presidency, you're pretty sure he's not, he can't be the president anymore. He's not only is he not smart enough or studied enough, the reasons cited were his lack of patience, his lack of understanding, his overriding concern to only assess things through the lens of how it would benefit him personally. That's why he's unfit. That is why all of these endorsements and all of these mass letters use the word unfit for him being in office. And I think it's important to give these people to give them their due, to realize that these are people who see photographs of mass killings of citizens by a dictator and are okay with that because, hey, that helps out America. But in the case of Donald Trump, they're not okay with that because him being president in no way helps America. It only harms America. So they're all going on the record, signing their names publicly to say, this guy, from a national security perspective, from an existence of democracy in the United States and a global alliance perspective, this guy can't be president again. And I've brought this up a few times, probably not this specifically, because in my mind, as a former single issue voter with pro life, I'm now, I guess, a single issue voter for Constitution and democracy, and freedom of choice of our elected leaders in the United States itself. That is my single issue. And that is the single issue of these people. These are people who serve Republicans and Democrats. They don't, like, you have career civil servants, and that's a big turnoff sometimes for some of you when you hear that, because you think, oh, this is just a government person. This is not a real world person. They just have to work in government. No, that is a civil servant. That is someone serving their country. And that is someone who's able to set, and has always been for decades, able to set aside their own political beliefs, because they do vote. They will vote for a president, whether it's always a Democrat or as always a Republican. But it doesn't matter. They, like the appointees, okay, that's going to be a political leaning, but most of these people are just civil servants. That's just their job in national security. It doesn't matter who the president is. They serve their country. They think the job is bigger than the president. So they would never go on record endorsing one candidate or coming out against a candidate, because it's none of their business. They're supposed to serve their boss. But with him, they know that he's just outside of the norm in every conceivable way, especially as the commander-in-chief. So looking at him as the commander-in-chief, they cannot support him. They endorse Kamala Harris, and they implore all of us to do so, as do I, all of you. And that's it. That's it for today. Been doing this for 5 weeks ago today, and still going strong, and we'll talk again tomorrow.